Training camp hasn't even started yet, and the Washington Commanders have already given us enough headlines to fill an entire week. A position coach is out the door before he ever got to coach a single camp practice. 3 starting caliber players just landed on the physically unable to perform list right before veterans report. And 2 of the most connected reporters in the business are now saying Stefon Diggs is closer than ever to signing with this team. So let's get into all of it, because there's a lot on the table before the pads even go on tomorrow. We'll start with a coaching change, because this one's been building for a while. Tight ends coach Ben Steele is no longer with the organization. The team is framing it publicly as a mutual parting of ways, but let's call it what it actually is. Steele was arrested back in June for a DWI, and along with that charge, he was also hit with refusing a breath or blood test and obstructing or resisting an officer without force. The organization went through its process of reviewing the situation, determined that he violated team policy, and made the call to move on from him. And here's the part that really stings for Steele. He was just hired into this role earlier this year. He didn't even make it to the start of training camp before losing the job. Head coach Dan Quinn is expected to officially announce his replacement tomorrow when the veterans report for the first day of practice, so we'll have clarity on that soon enough. As for who actually takes over, there are 2 realistic in-house options. The first is David Ray, the current pass game coordinator, who actually held the tight ends coach job for the previous 2 years before shifting over to his current role. Right around the same time Steele was brought in to replace him in that room. It's entirely possible Ray simply slides back into the position he already knows well. The other name in the mix is Wes Welker, the offensive assistant and former NFL wide receiver who actually already stepped in to coach the tight end room while Steele was away on leave during OTAs earlier this year. So Welker's got real recent experience running that room too. Either way, the Commanders aren't going to be without direction at tight end for long, and we should know which direction they're going in by tomorrow. Now let's get into the roster moves, because this is where things get a little more concerning depending on how you look at it. Over the weekend, the team placed 3 starting-level players on the PUP list, meaning none of them will be practicing when camp opens. Cornerback Trey Amos is on there as he continues working back from a fractured fibula. Defensive end Dorance Armstrong is on there as well, still recovering from a torn ankle suffered last season. And Deatrich Wise Jr., who missed almost the entire year with a quad injury, apparently still isn't cleared to get back on the field either. Now, before anyone starts panicking, here's some important context. Getting placed on the PUP list heading into camp doesn't mean these guys are ruled out for any length of time. They can be activated and returned to practice at literally any point during camp without missing a single game. The only time PUP designation actually costs you regular season games is if a player is still on that list once the season officially begins, in which case they'd have to sit out the first 4 games. So this isn't a crisis. It's simply a cautious step the team is taking with 3 players who are still working their way back from real injuries. And honestly, I'm not overly worried about it, and you shouldn't be either. This is exactly why the front office went out and added the depth it did at these specific positions. At cornerback, bringing in veteran Rasul Douglas a couple weeks ago was clearly insurance in case Amos wasn't fully ready by the start of the season, and even without him. This cornerback room still has a real starting trio between Mike Hilton, Danny Johnson, and Jimmy Moreland. Along the defensive line, both Wise and Armstrong bring positional versatility. Wise, in particular, can kick inside to a 5 technique alignment, and with additions like Kelavon Chaisson, Joshua Josephs, the return of Drake Jackson, and the signing of Charles Leno, this roster has more than enough answers to cover for these guys while they finish getting healthy. On a more positive injury note, defensive tackle Tim Settle is fully cleared and good to go after the foot injury he suffered last season in Houston. That's genuinely important news given how thin the depth is behind him at that spot compared to some of the other position groups on this defense. Everyone expected Settle to be ready in time for camp, but it's still nice to get that confirmed officially rather than just assumed. All right, now let's get to the story that's probably been living in the back of every Commanders fan's mind all off-season. Stefon Diggs just got linked to Washington in about as direct a way as you can get. ESPN's Jeremy Fowler reported over the weekend that Diggs is intrigued by the idea of joining the Commanders. According to Fowler, Diggs sees himself as a legitimate number 2 receiver playing alongside a talented young quarterback, and Washington checks that box with Jayden Daniels. On top of that, Diggs is actually from the DMV area, which only adds to the appeal of potentially playing at home. And it's not just Fowler carrying this story either. Adam Schefter went on the Pat McAfee show and echoed the same sentiment, saying Diggs is very much in play to sign with Washington. So why hasn't it happened yet? Here's my honest read on it. I think the Commanders want to see exactly what they've got in their younger receivers before committing $8 to $12 million, or whatever the going rate ends up being, to a veteran like Diggs. Look at the room as it currently stands. You've got your established veteran number 1 in Terry McLaurin. You've got a ton of hope, but zero proof yet, in rookie Antonio Williams out of Clemson. Beyond that, it's a lot of question marks. Bieniemy Brown is coming off a rough season in Jacksonville, even though he had a strong stretch here in Washington 2 years back. Treylon Burks flashed at times last year, but has been wildly inconsistent throughout his career. And then you've got Luke McCaffrey and Jalen Lane, 2 mid-round picks the team probably wants to evaluate further before deciding whether either one can take that next step. Signing Diggs right now would essentially be putting a bench label on one of those younger names before camp even starts. And it sounds like the front office wants a clearer picture first. That said, Washington probably shouldn't drag this out too much longer, because according to Fowler, at least 5 different teams have shown real interest in Diggs. If the Commanders were the only suitor, they could take all the time in the world. They're not. Diggs seems willing to give this team a bit of a runway, especially if it means avoiding training camp practices in 90-degree heat, but there's a real limit to how long that patience lasts. At some point, if Washington drags its feet, Diggs simply signs somewhere else, whether that's another contender or a team like the Ravens that's also been floated in these conversations. My gut says the Commanders make a decision within the first couple of weeks of training camp once they've gotten a real look at how the young receivers are performing. Before we wrap up today, there's something else worth mentioning, and it's not the kind of story we normally cover on this channel, but given the connection to this organization, it deserves to be acknowledged with the seriousness it warrants rather than treated as another headline. Former Washington offensive coordinator and current Kansas City Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy is dealing with an extremely difficult family situation. His wife Mia was shot Sunday night at their home in Loudoun County, in the same Ashburn area where the Commanders' own practice facility sits, and their son has been taken into custody in connection with the incident. The most recent reporting has Mia in stable condition, which is obviously the most important piece of information here. Bieniemy is expected to step away from his coaching duties for the time being to be with his family. There's no need to speculate further on the details beyond what's been confirmed. This is a real family going through something genuinely painful, and regardless of Bieniemy's past ties to this organization or his current role elsewhere, our thoughts are with him and his family during what's clearly an incredibly difficult time. So that's where things stand heading into the first official day of Commanders training camp. A coaching change resolved by tomorrow, 3 starters on the PUP list who shouldn't cause long-term concern, encouraging health news for Tim Settle, and a Stefon Diggs decision that feels like it's inching closer by the day. Here's the question I want you to answer down in the comments. Type T if you think Stefon Diggs will officially be a Washington Commander by the time the first preseason game rolls around, or type F if you think it doesn't happen. And if you want daily updates from every single practice starting tomorrow, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. Drop a like on your way out too, it genuinely helps this channel keep growing. Until next time, hail to the Commanders.